We dive into a full game preview of the Baltimore Ravens Week 11 matchup with the Carolina Panthers coming up next here on Locked On Ravens.
You are Locked On Ravens, your daily Baltimore Ravens podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into another episode of Locked On Ravens, your daily Baltimore Ravens podcast. I'm your host, Kevin Oestreicher of Ravens Wire. We're here, of course, on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And thank you so much for tuning in here, making us your first listen of the day. We're free and available on all platforms, including over on YouTube. And today's episode of Locked On Ravens is brought to you by SimpliSafe Home Security. With fast protect technology, exclusive use of SimpliSafe 24/7 monitoring agents capture evidence to accurately verify a threat for faster police response. There's no safe like SimpliSafe. Visit simplisafe.com/LockedOnNFL to learn more. And if you hear this on YouTube, be sure to like this video, subscribe to the channel. You can follow along in audio form as well. You can follow me on Twitter at KaleStriker34. I don't know for how long, but you can find me on there. You can find Qadry Ismail, who's here with us today, former Baltimore Ravens wide receiver, Super Bowl champion over there. I am Qadry Ismail. I'm over on Facebook now. I got the Instagram page going. Who knows how long Twitter's going to be there. So if you want to find my content over there, be sure to check out me on some other social media platforms. But Ravens football never stops. They got a Week 11 matchup against Carolina, trying to extend that winning streak to 4 games now.
I tell you what, life is good when you're a Baltimore Raven right now, because you're right. You know, winning streaks matter. Obviously, you look at this upcoming game and you say, hey, all we got to do is just take care of our business. But here's me, the player, like, oh, man, this is a trap game written all over it. And this is one of those games where you can get ahead of yourself. You can start talking about 4 games in a row, then 5 games, and then you jockeying for positioning in the playoffs and, who's going to come to the games and all that. You got to be so laser focused in and recognize that this season is not over. The winning streak is a good thing, but it's a 1 game, 1 week, week to week, day to day type of a proposition.
Yeah, and this is in any given Sunday league. This league has been so weird this year with upsets galore. Teams who weren't supposed to be good, they're pretty good this year. Teams who maybe had high expectations, not as good this year. So you have to be able to go into every game with a mindset that we have to fight for this win. This is not going to be an easy game. And you rightfully, I said at the end of last week's show, it might be an easy win for the Ravens. You said no easy wins in the NFL, and that's accurate. You got to fight for these things. And against the Carolina team, I think their roster is actually pretty underrated overall. They just have to get the quarterback thing right. We'll talk a bit about who's actually starting for them coming up a bit later in on the show here. But there's a lot that goes into a game like this, Q. So when you're the Ravens, what is your mindset when you obviously are favored in this game by a lot of points? The Ravens are double-digit favorites by a lot of different people right now. What is their mindset, or what do you think their mindset should be going into this game?
So I think the biggest thing for the Ravens is making sure that you keep the pressure on yourself and really trying to be that team that is that upper tier team that leaves no doubt in anyone's mind that if you come play us, you're going to get hit in the mouth, number 1. Yay, Roquan. And then number 2, from an offensive standpoint, we are so physical. We are so dominant, and we can impose our will. That's what I think that they need to do. And I think that, your mindset, if it is that, you put yourself in a position, to continue to be that upper tier team. You see the Buffalo Bills with some injuries and such, that things aren't looking as rosy up there in upstate, or should I say Western New York. So lots going on when it comes to jockeying for position for playoffs. Nothing is settled, but keep your foot on the gas pedal when it comes to having the mindset of, just dominating your opponent.
Yeah, and you bring up a good point there, because I think every win is so important. And people will probably look at this game and say, this isn't an AFC opponent. This isn't a divisional game. It's not even a conference game. I mean, you're talking about an NFC team here. So, what's the big deal if they lose it? Well, I think a win in the win column is much more is more important than people think it is, because it can come down simply to, do you have more wins than a team you're fighting with for seeding at the end of the day before all the tiebreakers go in there? A win against the Panthers goes a long way to that. But you mentioned the AFC and just kind of like the picture it is with Buffalo right now and everything that's going on. Where do you think the Ravens kind of slot in this conference? Because it feels like there are a lot of inconsistencies with a lot of teams here. And I think Baltimore right now, with the way they're playing, the momentum they have, I think they're in a pretty good spot.
I think they're in a really good spot. There's something to be said about being that seventh win. So, we can count the chickens before they hatch, because that's what we do. Obviously, if you're a Raven player, active player, you're sitting there, you're like, okay, we just can't look ahead. We got to do what we do. And I think overall, this is a team where, you look at Kansas City. I think Kansas City, they're playing some of their best football. Um, no real major injuries to report. When you look at Miami, goodness, people are talking about Tua being in the conversation of MVP, and rightly so. I think he's done a phenomenal job of really keeping pace and looking good, looking the part. Dare I say the JETS? What in the blue blazes is going on over there? So he, meaning the Jets, they are doing extremely well. Robert Sala, he's got them playing well. I mean, what can you say? So I think that division, the AFC East, yeah, there's some things that are going to be shaken out to kind of see what is what. Obviously, we're not exactly sure what's going on with the Bills. Josh Allen and his throwing elbow. He didn't have a great game against the Vikings. Vikings are a good team though, but then yeah, you look at what the Ravens are doing and how they're holding it down. Not taking anything away from the AFC West, but it isn't it interesting. Everyone was jumping on the AFC West bandwagon and talking about how great they are and they're going to be this and they're going to be that. And yeah, I mean Denver is wishy washy at best. Las Vegas, my goodness, you don't even know if Josh McDaniels is going to last a year or not. Um, I don't know who's even not like Chargers. Yeah, they're the most talented, disappointing team year in and year out. Always all the Chargers and then nothing. So taking care of business. You still got the Steelers on your schedule. You still got to go to Cincinnati. There is nothing that is written in stone, but I like the positioning right now where Baltimore's at.
I do too. And I think part of it is the fact that they continue to get guys back from injury. And I don't know if you would believe me if we were talking this time last year, Q, and I said next year on November 18th, or at least the 17th injury report, Baltimore had just 4 players on their injury report. On Thursday, it was Mark Andrews, Dale Armour Davis, Gus Edwards, and Jason Pierre-Paul. And I know the big story here is, when will Gus Edwards and when will Mark Andrews come back to the fold? Now, people are saying, why don't you just rest them for this week? This should be a game that they should win. So why don't you make sure they're 100%? Well, the reality is at this point, no one is 100% at this part of the year. But if Mark Andrews is 85%, or if Gus Edwards is 80 some percent, would you still bring them back, or would you really want to make sure that they're as healthy as they can be before you put them out there if you're the Ravens?
Yeah, so I think for Mark Andrews, I am learning my lesson from 2019 and recognize that a healthy Mark Andrews is coveted. It used to be November, December, but now with the extra game, it's definitely okay. December, January, like that's where the move up the ladder towards either having a home game or home field playoff or home field throughout the playoffs, whatever it might be from a seeding aspect of things. Absolutely, you need Mark Andrews, and I would wait. That's not even an option. I'm waiting. Mark, how do you feel? You feel good? Good. Rest. Mark, hey, you want to come back out there? Kind of look around, do your thing. Good, good. Hey, rest. No, we're not going to have you out there. What's the point? So I think for Gus, it might be one of those cases where, yeah, running backs, they're just not 100% all the time. We just got to see where you're at. kind of load manage, if you will, his workload carries and all that. But I throw him back out there, just not Mark Andrews.
Yeah, it's interesting. And I know that so many people do want them to rest this week. There are others who just say, "Hey, if they can play, put them out there and make sure they're on the field." But you have guys like Kenyon Drake has stepped up, Isaiah Likely has stepped up. These are guys who it's not like Andrews is the only player or Edwards is the only player who can give you quality production in that room. So I think Baltimore has to be feeling good about some of their depth, and we'll talk about some of that depth on offense coming up here in our second segment, diving into Lamar Jackson, potentially Charlie Kohler's debut, and more. So be sure to stay tuned. Still a ton to dive into here on Locked On Ravens. But first, this episode is brought to you by Tommy John. And getting stuck in Black Friday crowds is super uncomfortable, but shopping Tommy John's Black Friday sale from your couch, now that's super duper comfortable. When you give your loved ones Tommy John, they're that much more comfortable so they can do everything better. Shop Tommy John's Black Friday sale right now and give the gift of comfort to everyone on your list, including yourself, with brand new Tommy John underwear, loungewear, and pajamas. With over 18 million pairs sold, giving Tommy John has become a holiday tradition. 97% of women and men love getting a gift from Tommy John. That's why Tommy John doesn't have customers, they have fanatics. So shop Tommy John's Black Friday sale going on right now and get 30% off site-wide at TommyJohn.com/lockedon. 30% off everything now at TommyJohn.com/lockedon. TommyJohn.com/lockedon. See site for details. We're back here, our second segment of Locked On Ravens here on Friday, November 18th. Kevin Olshecker still here with Qadry Ismail, and Baltimore facing off against Carolina in Week 11. This is a 6-3 football team. They're hoping to make it 7-3, and I think that starts on offense. Q. We're going to get into defense in the final segment, but the offense, I think, has started to hit their stride, find their identity a little bit, and that is, somewhat unsurprisingly, on the ground. Now, they still are able to throw the football, don't get me wrong. But I do think in this one, and I want to ask you, just how important is it for them to continue to stick to the ground game and try to continue to establish that throughout the course of not only this game, but maybe the rest of the year here?
Oh God, yeah. I mean, but that's their identity, running the ball, right? You look at what Greg Roman and Lamar Jackson both tied to the hip together. They're like, yo, this is what we do best. That QB power. You can see some of the run pass option concepts. It opens up a lot for them in the passing attack, and they've done things this way. They've been successful at it, and I think it doesn't really matter about passing the ball in a passing the ball sense. It matters that you get strong production on first down. You dominate to the point where first and second down you're in 3rd and 1. First and second down you got another first down because you just ran it 18 yards. Whatever it might be, open it up, boom, take your shots down the field because people are fearing your run so much that they got to add an extra safety. And so that's where I see kind of like the game plan, the ideal game plan. Every game plan play call week to week is different, but I think the overarching here's what we do type of a mindset, that's kind of how I look at it.
Yeah, Carolina right now 18th in rush defense with giving up 4.5 yards on the ground per attempt. So that is 18th in the NFL. Overall, in terms of actual yards, if you want that stat, it's 25th in the league, giving up 1,392 total. So I think this is a team Baltimore can run the football against, regardless of if Gus Edwards is in the lineup or not. But in order to have a good run game, you can't just run it 60 times a game and never throw it. You do have to utilize the play action. You do have to be able to throw the football a little bit. So what is your confidence level? Let's say Andrews has to miss this game again here. What is your confidence level in this Baltimore passing attack? Because I think they've done a good job recently of being able to feed off of the run game and still be productive, even if they're not throwing it 50 times here.
What is the passing attack? How important it is, you're saying?
Yeah, and what's your confidence level in it?
Oh, God, yeah, I think it's high. Why? I like a Lamar Jackson on edge. Those two plays that should have been potential touchdowns to DeMarcus Robinson, it looked like motivation type mindset for Lamar when he was sitting there and addressing the media afterwards. He's like, "Yeah, I gotta hit those. I'm ticked off at myself. We got to go out there and play better. I got to play better. We got to we got a lot to do. We got to stay locked in. Haha, locked on. So at the same time, when it comes to his hunger and desire and competitiveness to be better, man, I just see a ticked off Lamar Jackson is a good thing to have if you're a Ravens fan.
Yeah, and Carolina has talent on that defense. Brian Burns, I know, is a trade target for some teams. He's obviously a very young, very talented player. A lot of people would have loved him in Baltimore, but that price I think that they were asking for, and I don't even think they wanted to move off him anyway. Derek Brown versus Tyler Linderbaum in the middle there is going to be big in terms of if Linderbaum can win, because he has struggled against some of those premier talents. Obviously, Quinnen Williams in week one. And Tyler Linderbaum in week 11 is much different than Tyler Linderbaum in week one. He has grown as an NFL player over the course of the NFL year here, but there is still talent on that Carolina defense. And I think a big part for me, and I know we've talked about it throughout the year, Q, is red zone. Baltimore's red zone production has been, I'd say, spotty. It's been a little bit of a struggle for them to get consistent touchdowns in the red zone. They've had to trade out touchdowns for field goals, and that's just the worst. I mean, it is the worst when you work so hard to get so far down in the red zone, and you're at the 5-yard line, you're at the 3-yard line, you got to kick a 20-some chip shot field goal. I mean, how important is it in this game for them to come out of the bye week, be able to establish maybe they go 3 for 4 in the red zone or 4 for 5 in the red zone instead of maybe 2 for 4 or 1 for 4?
Yeah, I think that's something that would be the elephant in the room is the red zone production or lack of it. I know Lamar Jackson has talked about that a lot, and we gotta score points. It's about scoring points. In other words, that's his way of saying it's unacceptable. It's his way of saying that we're a better football team than that. I just think that ultimately, when you look at what this red zone offense, it comes down to production on the offensive line. If you can hold up, you're going to be putting yourself in a position to have one of the most dynamic quarterbacks, generational talents, um, put the ball into the end zone, whether it be via his feet, someone else's feet, or his arm. I honestly think once the offensive line got settled in, uh, it was game on. Okay, they're going to get, and we saw a little bit more of it against the Saints. I really think that there's more to do in a positive way. Carolina is going to, yes, absolutely have its challenges defensively because they are good. And, I know that's going to be something that, John Harbaugh and company are going to have to figure out scheme and schematics to kind of, cause them to freeze and be like, what's going on? So the misdirection, the pulling of the guard, the pulling of the guard and tackle, is going to be out of an optimal. But I think when you have your chance, whether it be through the air or through running the ball, you got to take advantage of it. And that's just what it ultimately comes down to.
Well, someone who's done both well is Devin Duvernay this year in terms of being able to receive, run, returner. He does it all. He is a special kind of guy. So with Devin Duvernay and the talent he has, Q, we've seen the ball get into his hands, but I think he deserves the ball in his hands even more. And just being able to schedule touches for Devin Duvernay, get him the ball, because my thing is, look, when Devin Duvernay gets the ball in his hands, good things happen.
Devin Duvernay, when I look at his stats, and again, I go back to the Giants game. It's criminal that, he doesn't get featured more. When they do feature him, my goodness, he just produces. He just sets it up and it happens to the point where I think, like they do with Mark Andrews, they need to do for Devin Duvernay. And I know they got some plays set aside, but I'm talking about like some real deal, concepts slash option route slash give him the ball, jet sweep slash just give Devin Duvernay package a little bit more priority. I think I think the only real true package is the Mark Andrews package, and I think that's it's justifiably correct because of who he is and what he's done. But I think Devin Duvernay, you know, um, it's not that he's not involved. I mean, I'm saying get him more. That's what I look at when I see Devin Duvernay.
Yeah, and I think he deserves to have the ball in his hands more. He's someone who has produced when given the opportunity. He is a versatile player, can line up in a lot of different places, can take the ball in a lot of different areas, and plus, it's I think the fact that he's now their number one wideout with Rashad Bateman being done for the season here, they have the ability to get him the ball a couple more times a game because those Bateman targets you can spread them out to whoever, but I think you can schedule those touches to maybe have one or two more of them go to Duvernay.
I think that's what I'm looking at. The way in which they scheme it. I think ultimately, uh, likely because of the fact that they're in between the numbers, he's gonna feast. Uh, but if there were those opportunities to have the two receiver side and Devin Duvernay have some of the concept routes, or have him backside and let him win on the backside route and have the 2/3 receiver or two receiver tight end on the opposite side. Let him be the backside guy. I know Demarcus Robinson, can be the backside guy as well. But yeah, there's absolute versatility for Devin Duvernay to be more involved in the offense.
Yeah, there's potential, and I know one player whose potential I think he has a lot of it is Charlie Kohler, and he has the potential to come back and play in Week 11 against Carolina, make his season as NFL debut, as he was a
Yeah.
fourth round pick in the 2022 draft. Do you think that if he's ready and he's active, he will be out there? Because look, I think one of the things to talk about David Ajabo in the final segment to kick off that. But one of the things about both tight end and outside linebacker is that they don't need to throw Charlie Colder into it. Hey, you're playing 95% of our snaps as we have nobody else. This is a deep room that has obviously Mark Andrews. Josh Oliver's played well. Isaiah Likely's shown those flashes. You can't forget about Nick Boyle either. So what is Colder's role whenever he's active here?
I think the main thing for what we've heard from John is that they didn't have training camp, and so you got to treat everything like, hey, I'm going to be ready. I'm going to be ready to do what I need to do, and if I'm ready to do what I need to do, then don't necessarily give him a major workload. I mean, heck, even you saw Isaiah in his first go out. He didn't exactly look, sharp against the Jets, and now the season is in full swing. So that fresh leg, newness of the year, guys are like settled and locked in, know their role, know their assignments, and defenses, just be hitting. I think for Charlie, it's all right. I I think see what he does in practice, see what he does best in practice. If he looks ready for the part of taking it to the next level, give him a few plays and see how he reacts.
Yeah, and again, who knows? We don't know at this point if he's going to be active, but I think he does have the potential to at least play a couple snaps here and there. It's not like he's going to have. Maybe he will. I don't know. Maybe he has 10 catches for 100 yards and something, but I think he could still have a role.
Well, I think just real quick because I'm thinking back on John Harbaugh's press conference earlier in the week, and he made a great point. He goes, Bill Parcells, and one of his Parcells isms, and he has had many of them, was that for every rookie you start, count that as a game that you're going to lose. And I think ultimately, yeah, you got a depth of quality in the tight end room, so you don't got to necessarily be tripping on that. I just look at it as it's not necessarily imperative that we get Charlie out there to see what he can do. It's more along the lines of like, all right, within the framework of the offense or a particular drive, let's see what he can do.
Sure, you're not trying to force it if you're the Ravens,
Not
especially
at
a
all.
team now that look, this is not a rebuilding squad. They don't have to necessarily say, "Hey, we want to." They obviously want to develop their rookies. I'm not saying they don't, but they don't have to say we're going to get this guy a starting job so we can develop him throughout the rest of the year. They have their starters, and Kohler, I think, will be incorporated somewhat. But again, you're right; they don't have to force the issue and be like, "All right, you're out there. Let's go see what you can do right now in this tight end one role here." But coming up, we'll talk about David Ajabo, the defense, predictions, and more for this Carolina game. So be sure to stay tuned. Still a ton to dive into here on the show. But first, this episode is sponsored by BetOnline. And BetOnline.net is your number one source for sports betting info, stats, news, and analysis. You can get the latest odds and trends for every professional and amateur league out there. From football to basketball to soccer and esports, they've got it all over at BetOnline.net. And if you love sports podcasts, you can find those at BetOnline as well. They're always the fastest and easiest way to get your betting fix, as well as today use a mobile device to learn more. BetOnline, where the game starts. We're back rounding out Locked On Ravens with Qadry Ismail. I am your host still, Kevin Ostreicher, and we ended on Charlie Kohler. Q. Let's start with David Ajabo. I assume your mindset is kind of the same thing with Kohler and Ajabo in terms of putting him in in this case, the defense for Ajabo. But what do you see his role being? Because obviously a second-round pick, a lot of potential here. Could have been a first-round pick if not for the injury, too.
Yeah, I like me some Ajabo. I think, though, at the same time, what we said about Kohler kind of applies to him, but maybe not as strict because of the fact that he plays defense. It's more reactionary. It's more, instinctual. Obviously, it's one of those things where for David, it's how can he feel, because you're not going to really get a good feel of it in practice, but how does he feel with the whole flow of another man, like just full on, pressing back at you, and do you feel confident that your Achilles is going to hold up?
Sure. Yeah. It's a learning process for both guys. Obviously, one coming back from the injuries, but two adjusting to the NFL game in the middle of the season. This isn't like training camp. This isn't like preseason. This is you're diving in head first to all this NFL action. So it'll be interesting to see how it ends up going. But Roquan Smith, Q, is someone who was a new addition with the Saints game in week 9, and he now has had the bye week to get acclimated, learn the playbook. And actually, Mike McDonald said he learned the playbook in like 2 days or something. So that wasn't an issue apparently, but he's a smart football player, very talented as well. So we saw what he could do in week 9 against the Saints. What are your expectations coming out of the bye with the extra time to get acclimated?
If Lamar Jackson brings that swagger to the offense, he most certainly brings that swagger to the defense. We've seen it against New Orleans, and it seems like it was a lifetime ago. But boy, I just think that what he shows, what he's about. He just belongs in purple. He's a Raven. It's like so ideal, and I just think that mindset wise, he's only going to get better, and I think it's going to help the team immensely with their swagger and what they want to do. And I know he and Marlon was sharing how they were having those conversations, and they was talking about how they just haven't lived up to the hype. I think with him, they can live up to the hype.
And it was a defense already that was improving. They were getting their feet under them. Mike McDonald was getting his feet under him as well. You add a talent right like Roquan Smith, it ups the elite potential of your defense. It ups what you can do. It ups your personnel groupings, who you can rotate in and out, who you can play next to who. It all goes hand in hand with each other. And against the Carolina team, Q, that again, we're going to see Baker Mayfield here, not PJ Walker, start for them on Sunday as Walker's dealing with the high ankle sprain. So very familiar face to the Ravens defense, to the Ravens team. And, always, again, got to be prepared here. Mayfield hasn't necessarily had, good first couple seasons, all things considered, but it's definitely fallen off the cliff, as people would say, and hasn't had a great start in Carolina. The Panthers, though, they have DJ Moore, a Maryland guy, so went to the University of Maryland. You also have Deonta Foreman there, who has really come on as a running back for him. So this is going to be a game. The Ravens run team. This is an offense and a defense. They are second in the league in rush offense. They are 8th in the league in rush defense. So my thing here is if the Ravens can take away Carolina's ground game, they can hold Foreman, they can hold Chuba Hubbard and the rest of their run threats and force Baker Mayfield to throw the ball. Outside of DJ Moore, there's not really a threat that scares me. It's Terrace Marshall Jr., who hasn't really lived up to the hype. I know it was during the 2021 draft, there were comparisons of who should go first, Bateman or Terrace Marshall, and I think Bateman's been the better pick so far. But my thing is if they can stop the run game and force Baker Mayfield to throw, I think that's the optimal outcome for them.
Yeah, I think the revitalization of their run game has been tremendous, and it scares me. They do some different run schemes. They're not quite as exotic and moving, if you will, like we see here with Greg Roman style of running the ball, but they're fire off the ball, double team off, man blocking, and they do some good things, and they feel real confident. And this is after getting rid of Christian McCaffrey. After, so yes, priority number one: take away that run, make them one dimensional. Because if you can, I think even with DJ Moore, DJ can get his, sure, okay, but I think ultimately it's the guy behind the center who is going to make a critical error in a key moment in the game that could be the turning point in the game, and therefore giving the Ravens the advantage. So I think ultimately, uh, I mean, bruh, load up the box, do whatever you got to do. Just know you stop it, then you give yourself a chance to get Baker. And then if Baker is going to be Baker, then you got to be in position to make him pay because he's going to be turning it over.
Is this a shadow game, Q? Is this a game where Marlon Humphrey shadows DJ Moore? I don't necessarily think so because they use him in so many, like they use him in the nickel. That they don't usually do that type of thing anyway. But even so, I'm excited for the snaps that those two are going to get against each other when they get them.
Yeah, I haven't seen a real true shadow since Juju, back in Pittsburgh, and that was like 2 years ago when he was truly fruit punch. 3 years ago, maybe. Since then, yeah, no, he's been good. He's been solid. He's been doing his thing. Uh, but I think that's why you got Marcus Peters. He will probably do some things in the slot, and both he and John Harbaugh talked about that. So, it'd be cool looking at both him and DJ trying to go at it, and then also, just change of pace for what we see from Marlon as far as his outside play versus his slot play.
Yeah, I think when you put him in the slot, in those nickel situations, he's still really. I remember, when Tavon Young went down, the Ravens had to find a nickel guy, and Marlon Humphrey moved in there
Yeah.
and played so well. And they're also now utilizing him on those slot blitzes, which I know we've seen from the Ravens before, and they're using him all over the field. He is versatile and he is good enough to do all that at a very high level where you're not losing any production or any skill from him because he can do both and do all these things so well. But all right, Q, prediction time. Let's get into it here. This is a game that I know a lot of people expect Baltimore to win. But my question to you is, do you expect Baltimore to pull this game out?
So I am not going to Jedi mind trick it. If you think you are that team, that type of a balling team, 7-3 is then right there before you. You coming off a bye, you're coming off of a huge trade. You're doing all the right things. There's no, well, maybe if, all right, cool, let's see it. And so, boom, done, W, let's go. I think it's one of those games where, yeah, set the dominance, let it be known that the Ravens are coming. Let it be known from henceforth the flock is going to be out there and they're going to be out live and they're ready to go. I would say this is a game where it's 27-17, a decisive 10-point victory.
I give it 30-17, but I can see it going another way too. I can see it going three ways. I see 30-17. That's my official prediction. I don't think this is going to happen, but if they don't get up for this game, I think Carolina can make them pay for it. But I think John Harbaugh will have his guys ready, so I don't necessarily think that is an outcome that I think is going to happen. Or I could see some Tyler Huntley time where maybe we get like I don't know, 40 to like 20 victory. Maybe that's what it is.
Yep, I can see the blowout part with Tyler Huntley. That means that the defense just straight up shut down. Literally, I would say the Roquan factor is going to be evident, and now it's about trying to get turnovers. And so if you turn the ball over, making it a short field, and now all of a sudden it's like, that's where I think you'll see Tyler Huntley.
It's the snowballing effect where if Baltimore can get out to an early 14-0 lead, force a couple turnovers, they can capitalize off of those turnovers. There's the blowout impact. But we both have the Panthers score in 17. I have it 30-17, and Q has it 27-17. 17 here. But that's all I have for you here today on Locked On Ravens. Q, thank you so much again for hopping on with me. And when we get back next week, hopefully it is a 7-3 football team continuing that momentum on their 4-game win streak.
Bottom line is, if you think you that team, 7-3 is there. There's no excuses, no explanations. That's what you got to do. Get to 7th win.
Yep, don't get comfortable and don't get complacent are the two things. You got to make sure that you continue to put it to teams, continue to play your brand of football. I think Baltimore will do that, and so that's why I, and you as well, I know, are predicting that victory. But that's all I have for you here today on Locked On Ravens. Thank you so much for tuning in. When we get back here on Monday, we'll be diving into everything that happened in that Carolina and Baltimore matchup. So be sure to stay tuned for that, and I will see you right back here on Monday.